My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and when I saw the name flashing on the screen, my stomach dropped. It was my lawyer. The message was short, urgent, and terrifying. "Call now!" My fingers trembled as I stared at the words, heart hammering in my chest. I couldn't breathe for a moment, every instinct screaming that something was horribly wrong. Memories flashed in my mind like broken film reels. Little moments I had brushed off. Signs I had convinced myself were nothing. The sudden secrecy in her conversations. The late-night meetings she always denied. The way she avoided my eyes when I asked simple questions. Panic clawed at me as I realized I might have missed the warning signs. I pressed the call button, my voice shaking before even speaking, and braced myself for whatever nightmare my lawyer was about to reveal. Every second stretched endlessly, and dread wrapped around me like ice, leaving me breathless and utterly unprepared. I barely recognized my own voice as I answered, strained and trembling. "Yes, hello?" My lawyer's tone was sharp, urgent, and measured, like he'd rehearsed delivering the worst news possible. "It's about your daughter," he said. My stomach sank, a cold pit forming as dread coiled tighter. "She's taken steps to claim your assets, your home, your savings, everything you've worked for." I froze, unable to process the words. My daughter, the one I had trusted, the one I had stayed up at night worrying about, the one I had celebrated every birthday, every milestone with. How could she betray me like this? My mind raced, trying to rewind through every conversation, every interaction, searching for a clue I had somehow missed. The love I felt clashed violently with a searing sense of betrayal. I could still hear her laughter in the halls of our home, the way she leaned on me for advice, her hand always seeking mine. And now all of it was a facade, my trust weaponized against me. Anger rose like a tidal wave, burning through the disbelief, threatening to consume me entirely. I gritted my teeth and gripped the phone tighter, determined to understand how she could plan such a cold, calculated move. Memories of her childhood, the long nights she cried in my arms, and the celebrations we had shared. Everything twisted painfully as I realized the truth. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my voice cracked under the weight of shock. My own home, my hard-earned security, at risk from the one person I should have been able to trust unconditionally. It felt impossible, like some cruel alternate reality I had no choice but to endure. The betrayal settled into my chest like a stone, heavy and unyielding. But beneath the shock, a spark of resolve ignited. I wasn't going to let this destroy me without a fight. As I hung up, my mind drifted back to the little things I had ignored, brushing them off as typical teenage behavior or simple forgetfulness. There was the time she forgot to mention the meeting with the family accountant, the one where she supposedly had questions about college fees but somehow never spoke up. I remembered her phone calls at odd hours, whispered conversations she abruptly ended when I walked into the room. Even small requests, like suddenly asking to access accounts I'd never allowed her to touch, now seemed less innocent than I had thought. I had laughed when she insisted she needed the house documents for a school project, never questioning why she needed them or why she was so insistent. Every skipped dinner, every vague excuse, every secretive glance suddenly felt like pieces of a puzzle I had refused to see. My heart ached thinking, how could this happen in my own home? How could someone I nurtured and trusted so completely plot against me in ways I never imagined? The realization hit me with a painful clarity. I had been blind to the patterns of manipulation, thinking my child's affection was genuine while she was quietly mapping out her takeover. Anger mingled with sorrow as I remembered laughing at harmless jokes that now seemed like veiled warnings, trust that felt foolish in hindsight. I sat in silence, trying to gather the threads of my disbelief, knowing that this quiet suspicion had been there all along, whispering. But I had refused to listen. I couldn't face this alone. I needed someone to hear it, to validate that I wasn't losing my mind. I called my closest friend first, her voice warm and steady as always. "You need to sit down," she said immediately. "Tell me everything." I recounted the call, each detail spilling out in a torrent of disbelief and anger, my hands shaking as I held the phone. She gasped at the mention of my daughter's plan to claim the house and savings, words of outrage spilling naturally. How could she even think of doing that? She said. You've given her everything. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. My lawyer friend's voice entered next, measured and analytical, dissecting the legal avenues, potential loopholes, and ways I could protect what was mine. Every suggestion and affirmation felt like a small lifeline. Their concern made me realize I wasn't alone in this fight. The status tension gnawed at me. My own daughter scheming while I had played the role of the supportive parent, always giving, always trusting. But as I listened, a spark ignited. If they believed I could reclaim control, maybe I could too. The FOMO of losing everything, combined with their steadfast support, crystallized my determination. I could feel the momentum shifting. I wasn't just reacting, I was preparing. Each suggestion, each plan we discussed, layered onto my resolve, and for the first time since the call, I imagined standing strong again, reclaiming both my assets and my dignity. I spent days digging through files, emails, and every document I could get my hands on, retracing her steps and piecing together her plan. Then, buried in a folder I hadn't touched in months, I found it. Proof of her legal maneuvers, contracts signed behind my back, and correspondence that revealed how calculated she had been. My heart leapt, a mixture of disbelief and triumph coursing through me. She thought I'd never find out, that I was too trusting, too blind, too soft. But here I was, holding the evidence in my hands, and for the first time, the power shifted. I could feel the surge of agency, a flame of control rekindled after days of fear and helplessness. Every sneaky move she had made, every late-night call I had ignored, every seemingly innocuous request. It was all there, laid bare. Anger bubbled alongside a wicked satisfaction. I could almost see her smug face faltering if she knew I had discovered her scheme. I allowed myself a brief, private smile, savoring the moment before it hardened into strategy. This wasn't just about stopping her. It was about reclaiming what was mine, proving that I wasn't the powerless parent she thought I was. The knowledge gave me focus, clarity, and a renewed sense of determination. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, I felt like I held the upper hand. I paced the living room, phone in hand, proof in a folder beside me, my mind a storm of conflicting thoughts. Should I confront her now, raw and furious, demand answers and watch her crumble? The temptation was almost unbearable. I imagined her shocked face, the hurt in her eyes as I unleashed everything I had discovered. But part of me hesitated. What if I acted too soon? What if she had more cards up her sleeve that I hadn't uncovered yet? The moral weight pressed down on me. She was still my daughter, after all. My chest ached as I debated the line between justice and cruelty. I replayed every memory, searching for clues, trying to anticipate her reactions. The more I thought, the clearer it became. Patience was a weapon. Rushing in could ruin my chance to regain control completely. Still, the anger simmered, a constant companion whispering, "She deserves to be exposed now." I sat down, folder in lap, weighing each piece of evidence against potential consequences. Every option carried risk. Every choice would define the next chapter. My inner voice argued for careful strategy, while another screamed for immediate confrontation. The suspense gnawed at me, keeping me on edge, knowing that any misstep could tip the balance. I realized the battle wasn't just legal. It was psychological, emotional, and deeply personal. And as I made the decision to wait just a little longer, the tension didn't ease. It thickened, stretching the moment into a taut wire of anticipation that neither of us could ignore. I thought I had allies, people I could trust to help me navigate the storm, but reality hit hard and fast. Calls went unanswered, advice turned into contradictions, and what I believed were supportive friends suddenly seemed distant, or worse, aligned with her behind my back. A casual remark at lunch revealed that someone had shared bits of my strategy with her, and the sense of betrayal cut deeper than anything she had done alone. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and suddenly powerless, my careful plans teetering on the brink. Meanwhile, she appeared untouchable, walking through the house with a confidence I couldn't shake, smiling as if she knew something I didn't. The contrast was unbearable. Her poised, unflinching demeanor against my jittery, frustrated state. Every interaction reminded me how alone I felt, and every misstep magnified the stakes. I replayed the small betrayals over and over, each one adding weight to the growing knot of fear and rage in my chest. My sense of control slipped further, leaving me doubting every decision I had made, questioning every ally, and wondering if I had misjudged her cunning. Yet somewhere beneath the frustration, determination flickered. I refused to be completely crushed, even as the world seemed to tilt against me. The setback stung, the humiliation burned, and the tension grew unbearable. But I couldn't stop now, not when the fight for everything I valued had just begun. I retreated into the quiet of my study, closing the door on distractions and the chaos that had infiltrated my life. Every betrayal, every minor setback, every betrayal by so-called allies was now fuel for a plan I would craft carefully. I spread the documents across the table, reading contracts, emails, and notes with meticulous attention, mapping her moves like a chessboard. She thinks she's 2 steps ahead, I thought, but she doesn't know I've been watching all along. I considered every possible angle. Legal loopholes, the timing of filings, witnesses I could quietly gather, and even psychological tactics to unsettle her confidence without alerting her to my awareness. My mind raced, connecting patterns, predicting reactions, and anticipating missteps. The more I strategized, the more my fear morphed into focus, my anger sharpening into precision. I imagined the moment when she would realize she had underestimated me, the look of shock when the tables turned. For the first time in weeks, I felt control coursing through me, steady and deliberate. The suspense built, each calculated move a step closer to the twist that would flip the story in my favor. I rehearsed conversations, envisioned her reactions, and planned contingencies for every possible response. By the time I closed my laptop that night, exhaustion mingled with satisfaction. I was no longer a passive victim, I was a strategist, quietly weaving the web that would deliver both justice and retribution. I arranged the meeting meticulously, choosing a neutral location where nothing could be misconstrued but where I could control every detail. She arrived, radiant and confident, convinced she had already won. Her smile was sharp, a subtle arrogance that stung every time our eyes met. I felt the tension coil in my chest, but I forced a calm I didn't entirely feel, letting her believe she was in charge. Every word, every gesture was calculated, each pause designed to make her overconfident. I could see her scanning the room, subtly gauging the setup, unaware that every element had been orchestrated with precision. FOMO and anticipation buzzed through me as I imagined her realizing, too late, that she had walked into a trap. The conversation began casually, the kind that seemed harmless, but each exchange was layered with hidden meaning. She laughed at jokes I had planted, dropped hints I had anticipated, and slowly, the tension grew palpable. I noticed a slight flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, fleeting but enough to fuel my hope. Every moment teetered on the edge of revelation, the audience, or rather my own heart, holding its breath. Each pause, each reaction, built toward the inevitable cliffhanger, the moment she would see that control had shifted entirely. My pulse raced, not with fear, but with the thrill of being on the brink of finally turning the tables. Every instinct screamed to stay composed, to let the trap unfold naturally, while the suspense stretched taut, unrelenting, drawing us both toward the confrontation that would redefine everything. The day arrived, and I walked into the room fully aware of every eye that would witness what was about to unfold. She entered moments later, radiant as ever, confident in her assumed victory, completely unaware that the tables had been turned. I felt the familiar pang of betrayal but harnessed it, channeling it into composure and strategy. As the meeting began, I let her speak first, watching the arrogance in her posture, the way she tried to assert dominance, and I held my silence, letting the tension build. Then, when she least expected it, I presented the evidence. Contracts signed in secrecy, emails proving manipulations, and witnesses who had quietly corroborated my findings. The room fell silent, the weight of revelation pressing down on everyone present. Her face went pale, the smile evaporating as shock replaced confidence. She tried to recover, to laugh it off, to deflect, but every statement she made only dug the hole deeper. I spoke calmly, deliberately, each word measured, explaining the extent of her plans while revealing the consequences she had triggered. Friends, advisors, and even distant relatives watched as her scheme unraveled publicly, and the power dynamic shifted irreversibly. I felt a surge of control, every emotion I had bottled, fear, anger, hurt, channeled into this moment of vindication. As her attempts to manipulate faltered, murmurs of disbelief spread through the room, some nodding in my favor, others simply stunned by the audacity and precision of my response. Tears threatened her eyes, and for a fleeting second, I glimpsed the vulnerable child she had once been, now lost beneath the weight of her choices. I didn't gloat. I let the facts speak, letting justice unfold naturally. The sense of empowerment was overwhelming, a combination of relief and righteous satisfaction washing over me as she finally understood she had underestimated me completely. The legal documents secured my position, her social standing faltered, and the entire room bore witness to the reversal of fortune. By the time the meeting concluded, she was left speechless, humbled, and entirely exposed, while I emerged not only vindicated but stronger, smarter, and fully in command. The emotional high was intoxicating, the satisfaction profound, as I realized that the moment I had feared for so long had become the exact turning point I had orchestrated with patience, intelligence, and unwavering determination. After the confrontation, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The tension that had gripped me for weeks began to ease, replaced by a profound sense of relief. I thought back to the days before I knew her plan, laughing together at dinner, celebrating birthdays, sharing secrets I thought were sacred. The contrast was staggering, the warmth of trust and love now shadowed by the sting of betrayal. Yet, even in that reflection, I found clarity. I realized how easily I had been blinded by affection, how much I had taken for granted, and how resilience had quietly grown within me. Every memory of laughter now carried lessons, every trust broken a reminder of vigilance and self-respect. I felt vindicated, my anger giving way to quiet satisfaction that justice had unfolded, that manipulation and deceit could no longer define my life. The relief was emotional, almost physical, like a weight lifted from my chest. I understood that family dynamics are complex and fragile, that love can coexist with betrayal, and that boundaries are essential for protection. As I sat in the quiet of my home, reflecting on the past and the aftermath, I knew I had reclaimed not just my assets, but my dignity. The journey had been painful, yet the reward was profound. Clarity, empowerment, and the knowledge that I could face any challenge with confidence. The lessons lingered, the contrast between before and after stark, and the emotional satisfaction of justice achieved made every sleepless night and anxious day worth it. With the legal proceedings concluded, I watched as the final pieces fell into place. The family home, my savings, and all other assets were officially restored to my name, secure and untouchable. The relief was immense, but more than that, there was a quiet triumph that no one could take away. Friends and colleagues who had doubted or stayed silent now acknowledged the strength I had shown, nodding with a mixture of admiration and respect. I didn't need to boast or celebrate loudly. The subtle shift in how people treated me was enough. Every glance, every hesitant apology from those who had underestimated me, reinforced the satisfaction that came from seeing karma unfold naturally. I realized that true empowerment wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about reclaiming dignity and demonstrating intelligence, patience, and resilience. Each success, each restored piece of my life, felt like a reward, not just for surviving betrayal, but for navigating it with integrity. As I moved through the days that followed, I carried a quiet confidence, knowing that the balance had been restored, that justice had been served, and that I had proven to myself and to the world that I was unshakable. The satisfaction was deep, earned, and undeniably karmic, leaving me proud yet grounded, powerful yet composed. Even with everything restored, a part of me remained heavy. I had won the battle, reclaimed my assets, and exposed the betrayal. But the cost lingered in my heart. I thought about the innocence I had lost, the trust shattered, and the realization that love alone could not shield me from deceit. Family, I realized, was more complicated than loyalty or blood. It carried expectations, disappointments, and the capacity for profound hurt. The memories of laughter and closeness now mingled with caution and wariness, teaching me that protection sometimes required vigilance over blind faith. Yet, there was beauty in this awareness, a clarity that strengthened my sense of self. I forgave without forgetting, embraced the lessons, and understood that boundaries were not walls, but shields for the heart. The moral lingered. Love and trust are precious, but resilience, wisdom, and self-respect define how we survive betrayal. As I reflected quietly, a bittersweet calm settled over me, leaving both pain and satisfaction entwined, a reminder that justice and love can coexist, even amid loss. The dust had settled, and I finally felt the weight of everything lift. Justice had been served, boundaries firmly drawn, and the lessons of betrayal etched deeply into my heart. I was no longer the trusting, naive parent who had overlooked the subtle signs. I was stronger, wiser, and unshakable. The sense of empowerment was profound, not loud or boastful, but steady, undeniable, and quietly victorious. I had reclaimed not only what was mine, but also my sense of self, proving that patience, strategy, and resilience could triumph over deceit. Looking back, the journey revealed the true meaning of family. Loyalty must be earned, trust must be guarded, and love alone cannot protect against manipulation. I carried forward the scars as reminders of strength, knowing that the next challenge, however daunting, could be met with confidence. The emotional verdict was clear. Betrayal had been exposed, justice delivered, and I emerged whole, empowered, and resolute. The story closed not with anger, but with reflection, leaving me, and anyone who followed my journey, with a lasting sense of closure, triumph, and the courage to demand respect and fairness in every aspect of life.